I know this movie was released several months ago, but since Osgood Perkins has a new film that is currently playing in theaters, I thought it would be a good time to finally share my thoughts on his last feature, Longlegs. The story follows an FBI agent tasked with tracking down an occultist serial killer responsible for murdering multiple families throughout the state of Oregon. But the case proves to be rather difficult since the killer has never been physically present in any of the crime scenes. And while that does sound like it would make for an interesting premise, the movie didn't captivate me the way that I was hoping it would. Now, I should say that this is definitely a well-made film. The acting, the directing, the cinematography, the editing, the sound design, and all of the technical aspects are undeniably impressive, but I just wasn't engaged by the actual story being told. And I think that has to do with how the film plays with different horror genres. Because the movie starts out like a regular mystery crime thriller, not too dissimilar from films like Seven or even Zodiac, but the story gradually becomes more and more supernatural, to the point where it eventually loses all sense of reality. So if you wanted to try and solve this mystery on your own like I did, then you're going to be in for a bad time. Because as the story goes on, it becomes increasingly more obvious that this mystery could never be solved in the first place. To be clear, I'm not talking about the actual plot of the film, as I thought the narrative itself was surprisingly predictable. What I'm saying is, no police force would be able to solve the Longlegs cases, because the Longlegs murders would never actually take place in real life. And I get that this is a weird criticism to have. After all, this is a fictional movie not based on any real-world crimes, but I think I wasn't personally able to suspend my disbelief because of how grounded the movie felt when it began. And I just wish that the rest of the movie kept the grounded, straightforward, and realistic tone that was established early on. But as it stands now, the supernatural elements completely hijack the back end of the film. And these elements may work for some people, but I personally found them to be too cryptic and esoteric for my own personal taste. Like, when this movie was first released, all I kept hearing about was how it felt like Silence of the Lambs. But Silence of the Lambs isn't supernatural at all. Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill are just regular people with serious psychological issues. And that to me is far more interesting than finding out that either character was somehow possessed by the devil. But that's just my opinion anyway. I happen to find horror films that are grounded in some sense of realism to be more captivating than ones that are supernatural or satanic in nature. That doesn't mean the movie is bad, it just didn't happen to be my personal cup of tea. But I can't finish this review without talking about Nicolas Cage's performance as the titular villain, because Cage absolutely knocks it out of the park here. Longlegs is a character that is both completely unlike any other character that Cage has ever played before, and one that feels like an odd amalgamation of every character that Nick Cage has ever played before. It's just an absolutely wild role for Cage to be playing, but he does some undeniably fantastic work here. His wonderfully creepy portrayal of Longlegs is definitely one of the most memorable performances of the entire year. Even after a few days of having seen the movie for myself, I'm still thinking about his performance, his character, his dialogue, and every delivery of said dialogue. It's just a shame that nothing else in this movie is as memorable as Cage's performance. Micah Monroe does a solid job of leading the movie, for example, but her performance didn't exactly elevate the material here. here. But I absolutely loved Micah Monroe in the 2015 horror film It Follows, so I think any issues I have with her performance comes from Osgood's specific style as a director, which would explain why all of the other performances also felt a bit wooden to me. Some dialogue just felt very unnatural, and the delivery of said dialogue often felt very stiff. So most of the characters in this story didn't feel genuinely real to me. And since I couldn't buy into the characters or the story in which they inhabited, I had a hard time trying to enjoy the movie overall. So, despite the fact that Longlegs is technically a well-made film, it just didn't really appeal to my own personal taste. I guess Silence of the Lambs with a bizarre supernatural twist just wasn't my cup of tea. Still, since the movie did prove to be a stylishly crafted thriller, I think I would say that Longlegs would get a mild recommendation from me. And I appreciate anyone who took the time to hear my full thoughts on this movie, so as always, thanks for watching.